our legislators. I do think we need to
Are
put
those
the
guys still in
pressure on them.
office?
Pardon me?
We just had elections. Are those guys still in
No,
office?
yeah, there wasn't much change in that sense. But I mean, I think you still need to put the pressure on your state legislators, but I don't think we can wait, and I adhere to the idea that, you know, each community needs to begin to pass ordinances to protect their water and their residences and their citizens. So that would be my approach.
Thank you.
You would think DEP would not be allowed to issue more
They're
permits
radioactive,
than what they're able to
Lord. Too many
effect.
measurements.
Given the current budget crisis and the cuts in the manpower, you know, they had a proposal to where they wanted to hire like 57 new inspectors. They have 67 conservation districts in the state that they took right out of the picture. It's time to pressure them to maybe get the conservation districts at least some inspection authority, or at least to let them go out and get eyes on the site. They're issuing permits sight unseen, just for the benefit to get them in the works. It is a dollar issue. Wasn't too long ago, you know, we had a Superfund site in Wellsville, and we're not that far away from it again. That's my feeling.
I'd like to speak one point that Dave brought up and that Commissioner Paul Heimel brought up also, was the fact that the Conservation District personnel were taken away from the review process. A lot of people may not know how that worked out, but or how it was before, was that if someone wanted to apply for a permit, not a drilling permit, but they would have to have an erosion and sedimentation control permit and a watershed permit and a plan that would have to be reviewed and approved before they could do any of their work. And Secretary Hanger took that process away from the local level and put it at the level for our district in Williamsport. And I don't know how many guys work in the Williamsport DEP office that would come to Coudersport on a call, but certainly they don't know the landscape as well as our local guys that work in the Conservation District office. And so the review process was it was called an expedited review, and there was a case over in the marshlands on the other side of Gelton where the Chesapeake Bay Authority sued DEP for an expedited review of a permit which permitted drilling. I want to get this right. It was, I think it was not the drilling itself, but they were going to put the pipeline through a exceptional value wetland site. Anybody from Potter County that worked at the Conservation District would not have approved that plan. It was approved by a rubber stamp from a guy that never looked at the map to even see that it was a wetland that could not have that pipeline go through it. So the Chesapeake Bay Foundation sued DEP, and after that was taken to court, those permits were stopped. And so they had to do it a different way. But that's sort of what's happened. It's taken out of the local hands that know the area were removed from the whole process, and the expedited review process was put in place so that things could happen faster and without as much knowledge or review over what really was going to be done. So and again, that came from the state level. I talked to some guys in DEP, and you know, they can't complain about it because they want their job. So until we get a change in government and how they run things, I think it's up to us as individuals to do whatever we can to talk to our legislators of how important we think this whole issue is. And we don't have the money that the oil and gas industry does, but we do have the votes. So, okay, that's my piece.
I think we got some frac fluid on the mic here, so just raise your hand and speak loudly if you have a question.
Right. Oh, I just wanted to add to the radiation and the question about that. And the federal government leaves it up to the states to regulate naturally occurring radioactive material and low-level radiation. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Yeah, they leave it up to the states to regulate that. And so when the fracturing fluid comes out of the wells and the residual waste trucks bring it to the wastewater facilities, they do have to go through a monitor, and it checks to see if it's radioactive. And if it does make the monitor go up at that point, the truck is asked to pull over to the side, and if it's determined that it's naturally occurring radioactive material, it's not regulated, and they're allowed to proceed to bring the wastewater into the wastewater facility. So, and because it's naturally occurring, there's no regulations.
How do you determine that?
Well, what's in with Marcellus Shale is, well, during the process of drilling, you know, they're adding the water to a dead seabed, and it's highly salty. And so what happens is the radiation binds to the salt. And in Marcellus, it has beta and gamma, and it's called radium-226. And so that binds to the salt, and when it comes back up, it's radioactive. And then at the bottom of the Marcellus Shale is a layer called pyrite, and that has uranium in it. That also binds to the salt water. The salt is natural to the Marcellus seabed. And so when you add the water, the salt is in the water, and the radiation binds to that, so the flow back is radioactive. And it's naturally occurring, but it's not natural to, actually they call it norm, but it's really 10 norm, technologically enhanced naturally occurring radioactive material, because the radiation also binds to some of the chemicals that are coming up. So it's more concentrated. So I just wanted to add that to the...
That's a whole bunch of information.
I thought you told us you couldn't do public speaking at all.
Oh, I'm really bad. I hate my voice.
There was a question over here.
Thank you very much, you guys, for answering our questions. I just found it interesting that in Texas, the gentleman, or the group of people that were very athletic were found to be extremely poisoned with arsenic, and they suspected the spouses for poisoning them. My question, kind of a dual question, were anyone brought up on criminal charges regarding the poisoning? And is that even a possibility to charge them criminally with poisoning? Because these are poisons, and they could only be poisoned through this process. And especially if we are protecting ourselves with getting the initial water testing done and notarized, showing that we had clean water, or if we already have had a water test done, showing we have clean water, and our children or ourselves become sick. I don't care about money. If my child dies or gets sick, is it possible to have criminal charges brought up against a company that hides what chemicals they are putting in the ground?
Not when you're
We all
exempted.
saw what they
Not
said to
when you're
the
exempted.
Congress. We all saw the dodge of what they were trying to dodge.
Yeah, what Bill said is they're exempted from the Clean Water Act, so they can't be
Safe
criminally
Drinking
responsible.
Water Act, Clean Air Act.
Right, so they can't be held responsible because that's the law. That doesn't mean, but as they said in the movie, what usually happens is if a bad situation occurs, they'll just buy those people off, sign a non-disclosure, and that's the end of it, and move on. So if there's enough money behind it, you can.
But what if you don't want money?
No, well, those are the people you're seeing on the movie.
Yeah, Lennox Township over in the northeast part of the state, citizens over there have filed legal lawsuits against the gas company. And one of the things they're asking for in that civil lawsuit is actually a fund to be set aside for future diagnosis and treatment should they come down with a disease in the future related to those constituents from the gas drilling that they were not informed was poisoning their aquifer. So they're actually asking for that in their lawsuit. So it's a civil lawsuit, not a
I
criminal.
know, I'm just curious about the criminal the criminal aspect of this. There is a criminal aspect. to
Do you remember
this.
the cigarette industry, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And you remember they testified in front of
I
Congress?
understand. I
And you
just-
saw them testify
I
in the
know,
movie in
I
front of
just look
Congress.
at the,
Yeah.
arsenic is arsenic.
The answer is.
The person, if the spouse had been poisoning, the spouse would have been charged criminally.
Right, yeah.
Spouse isn't exempt from
That,
that.
you have to understand the pollution.
So I
laws.
guess I have to be a politician and be exempted to poison anyone.
The pollution laws in the United States regulate the amount of pollutants that they can dump on you or put in your water or in your air. It doesn't mean they're not polluting you, okay? Some townships have actually passed SELDF type ordinances that actually say that, no corporation can chemically contaminate them, and they've actually passed those ordinances. I really think a lot of the motivation for protecting yourself is going to have to come at the community level because the state's not doing it, okay, and the agencies. And we're 2 years away. It will be 2012 before the EPA study is conducted on the impacts of hydrofracking on drinking water, whether it can be contaminated. But I would say they don't really need to do any more research. They can just look at Dimmick and Fort Worth and all those places where it's been contaminated. And we're doing the EPA